experiencing in some of our communities is, the dilapidated, remodeling, and of course beautification. So, we're trying to do beautification. Matter of fact, we have a team beautifying our community this Saturday. That's going to play a major part in, just trying to bring people into that community. So if there's any help that we can get from anybody, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, the faith community is so important to this because it might be that your church wants to buy some of those properties, but we could again help you with those services, team up with you. We'd love to be able to set up grants, programs, and we would do all of that in partnership with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have a couple quick questions. When you use the word, building something new, and my concern is about what we've already got. And as you know, Rocky Mount is blessed with, even in our at-risk neighborhoods, with wonderful shotgun and bungalow and the whole, different types of architecture. The thing that I couldn't quite figure out was, if we did the land trust, then what happens to, just what this gentleman just mentioned, the properties we already have? Who is going to decide, this 21-member board, who's going to decide whether the shotgun house gets fixed or whether we're going to build something new? And my concern is, the preservation of what we've got, because it's outstanding, but it needs some love and attention.
Maybe pull up those property cards, Allison. So it's a great question. And so far, we haven't looked at any that were in the historic district because that would add a whole different layer. But we agree with you that we would want it to look like the community. So part of the process is you have to go and look at those houses and see if they can be rehabbed.
Sure.
There's some, that I know self-help is looked at that can be rehabbed, but there's others that just have to be demolished.
Well, that I understand, but who is it that will make the ultimate decision for everybody about,
Which happened?
yeah, which, how, we're
That
going to
would-
build some, or are we going to earmark a couple of blocks in Ward 3, or,
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
and get something done?
Yeah,
Who's going to decide that?
That's the board of directors. The board of directors for the land trust with all those 21 people, if that's how it shapes up, they would decide. We started pulling information together, just thumbed through a couple of them. They'd have to inspect them and then they'd have to decide. Our recommendation is that they look at these clusters so that you go in an area, then you go to another area.
Yeah.
But that's going to be that board taking input from people, at meetings as to what that business plan looks like.
Okay. Just, the only thing that, that I am here is to be sure that however we go about this, and I'm sure it would be helpful to a lot of people, but that somehow or other, the protection is for the things we already have and the neighborhoods who need that kind of help in order to reclaim the neighborhoods, make them safe, the whole spiel. And so I just wanted to be sure that the idea of this, how in practical terms, it winds up getting translated into that shotgun house or to that bungalow.
Right. So most of the best practices that we're going to see from these other land trusts is that you would build into those bylaws, these principles by which the land trust is going to operate. So that even when you have elections and you have new board members coming in, they're always adhering to these basic principles, which might be, retain the character of that neighborhood, retain the
Absolutely.
architecture. Those are things that can go into those bylaws as operating principles.
All right.
I wish I could tell you it's a benevolent dictatorship, but it's not.
Yeah.
So it would be a board.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Antoinette Cutler, and I am from the Hillsdale area here in Rocky Mount. My question, I actually have two. And the first one, I have a 501c3 already, and Restoring Women Empowering Lives Outreach Ministry. I've already talked with the other officers of our community and reached out to them about my 501c3, using it in the past and in the future. And so we are concerned about, is there a team of people that would come in and help us to set up so that it can come under the umbrella, but also be able to bring in the Hillsdale Association to teach us how to go about this 21-member board? How does it go about running when you have a faith-based ministry already, and you're also the president of the community, and trying to work in that area?
Okay, so let me make sure I have it. So you've got a 501c3,
Yes.
and its mission is ministry.
Well, its ministry, its mission is ministry and outreach.
Okay.
Restoring Women, Empowering Lives, outreach
Okay,
ministries.
okay. And you want to be able to pull that neighborhood association functions in with that 501c3.
We are interested in pulling that 501c3
Okay.
into
And then
the
possibly
neighborhood association.
partnering with the land trust.
Yes.
Or maybe even eventually being your own land trust. Okay.
All of the above.
Okay, so you've got a C3, you've already had your IRS designation, you went through that whole list that I
Yes.
showed. So usually what you have to do is you have to go in and amend it, because you've already submitted it and said, this is our purpose, this is what we're doing, this is how we're handling our money. So it's just a process of amending it to talk about the new functions. If you're a straight C3, it's in that whole booklet you had to do to get that C3, there's going to be a number of areas where you have to rewrite that description, resubmit it, and have it approved. They don't take it away, but they approve it with those new functions. So that's the process. So what we would hope is that professional services in the land trust would be able to help neighborhood associations create that type of entity. And then you could be doing houses and renovations and working with the land trust.
Okay, the other question, thank you so very much. The other question is that, now when we're homeowners, we normally leave our property to our children, husband, spouse, or whatever. And let's say that, you buy into it and your husband or your children, how does that
As
play
far
a
as
part?
a property and a land trust?
Yes.
So it's really it's gonna depend on those operational procedures that board sets up, especially with that land piece about leasing the land. But just like in any other mortgage or deed, it could pass to the spouse or the children. They would just have to adhere to all of those same provisions of the land trust. But it can absolutely have all of that built into the process.
I hear you say also that, and this is three questions, I guess.
That's all right.
As far as if you have property that is, older property, I can't think of the word, but now I'm thinking so many things. questions. Historical properties. So is there another part of this that is for historical properties?
Yeah, we did, first take on this idea and this plan, we didn't look at any properties in the historic district, because then you've got all those other layers that you have to do, and it costs more, and so we started with the easy stuff first.
Okay.
But, there's no reason why a land trust couldn't operate. I just think it has to get some experience under its wings before it can take on those more complicated ones.
Okay, thank you. Is there any information for that? Because I have some property that is, and just
Oh, and
interested in
in the
information.
historic, yeah, there's lots of information about what you do with a historic property, and there's different types of tax credits that you can use for that. So yeah, I can point you to a lot of information on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
so
you.
very much.
How you doing? I'm Peter Armstrong. I've got several questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One of the first things, and it kind of went along with your presentation, has the transfer of property from one person or another, has that been legally challenged at all? Or is this a new process so new that it really has, we don't know if that's going to happen?
Oh, no, there's 255 land trusts in the country. There are land trusts in Australia, Great Britain, they're all over. Not any challenges. I mean, it's just like other transfers, with the deeds and sale or donation. So I mean, there absolutely could be a case out there, but it's not because it's a land trust. It might be because it wasn't transferred properly.
And Rochelle, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it seems like some consortium that the city has been involved in lately, the house in Tarboro that was paid, and they ended up having to eat the mortgage on it or something because legally it didn't stand up that the guy had to pay it. And I don't mean to put you on the spot on that. Do you remember what I was talking about?
Yeah, that's, excuse me, that's a little bit, that's a lot different.
Oh, okay.
So that was a Down East Consortium, and these were people who participated in a consortium using home funds, and there are multiple jurisdictions that were part of this. The jurisdiction that you're talking about is associated with Edgecombe County. The city serves as the purveyor,
Yeah.
the organizer of it, and in that particular case, in Tarboro, where this property was located, the heir of the property challenged Edgecombe's, I guess, practice
Right.
of keeping the property, but they ended up voting as a board, they being the consortium and the Edgecombe folks voted to give that property back or to give the property to the heir. So this is completely,
Yeah, well, I know, but it sounds like a kind of I know it's completely different, but it sounds like a transfer of property from one to another and not having to pay, so, but anyway, that's fine, I appreciate it.
okay, it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can run into those issues
Yeah.
with any of those deals. I think it's, thinking about it beforehand, going for properties where you're not going to have those issues.
As a resident of Nash County, it kind of bothered me that it indicated Rocky Mount, Edgecombe County, like we're not talking about Nash County, and that's just a point
Oh,
of
so
information.
that play name that I used, it was the Greater Rocky Mount Metro. So again, that was just
Okay, that's fine.
that was
I
just me sitting up late coming up with a
be-
name.
Well, be careful right here, because
I know.
that's always an issue,
But it didn't have,
unfortunately.
well, in the properties that you saw in Edgecombe,
Yeah.
those were examples too.
And I understand that there's a tremendous need there. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have a-
So I'm
I don't
not
have a problem
slighting
with that.
Nash,
It's
no.
just, one of the issues that has come up in my neighborhood is the use of accessory dwellings. And are there any controls or any requirements in terms of using those facilities, in terms of actually people living in them?
Well, that falls under city ordinances. So again, I was looking at them in the city, and Rocky Mount has modified its ordinances, as a number of cities have done, that their previous ordinance said only family members. They've changed that. So, and so you would have that, if it was in the county or other cities, that goes back to whatever the guiding ordinance says.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm sorry to keep going on, but.
That's all right.
What kind of physical staff is associated with the land trust? Obviously, you've got to have somebody to do all this stuff, even though you have a board.
Right, you've got a board, they're making the
Yeah,
principal
yeah.
operating. So typically, the Douglas Land Trust has been around for about 3 years. They have rental and ownership. They have 4 people. They have somebody that's devoted to fundraising. They have someone that's kind of the overall manager. They have someone who's training, and then they have someone who supervises the construction. So that's an example.
And how are they funded? Is it?
They're funded through DC, provides some funding from them. They have funding from banks, credit unions, foundations, individuals.
Okay. And last but not least, it was interesting when you talked to the folks in DC living in an apartment, basically complex. I thought immediately over, and I don't even know where it is a boarded up, wonderful old apartment complex off of, I don't know if it's off of Sunset, but it's Harbor Street, but in that area. And I was thinking, I don't know who owns it or what they would ever do that, but that'd be the wonderful opportunity to come in and rehab a dwelling that you have, 25 or 30 people in, as opposed to one house.
And you
Yeah.
can do that, and you can still make those ownership, not
Yeah.
rental.
Yeah, I just, that was just wonderful. Thank you.
Give us
Wonderful
that
person.
address and we'll drive by and look at it.
Okay, I'll find it.
Okay, thank you. There's a specific definition for accessory dwelling unit. We'd have to pull up. So usually tiny houses includes wheels and movable foundations, and accessory dwelling unit is a permanent foundation.
And very temporary.
And very temporary, yes. But people sometimes call it that.
Kind of home.
Yeah, yeah.